HR shot down my severance plea. Standard procedure, they claimed. Then my attorney highlighted the clause triggering full share vesting on termination. Their confidence crumbled. I knew the moment my phone buzzed at 5:32 a.m. that something was wrong. Not the usual wrong like a missed deadline or a server crash, but the kind of wrong that crawls up your spine and whispers, "This is going to hurt." The Microsoft Teams notification glowed on my screen, its blue light slicing through the pre-dawn dark of my San Francisco loft. A meeting invite. 7:47 a.m. today. Not 7:30, not 8 o'clock, but 7:47. A time so precise it felt like a taunt. The subject line read, Strategic Realignment Summit. No agenda, no context, just those 3 words, heavy with corporate menace. The sender? Derek Voss, Nexus Tech's head of HR. I'd seen Derek smile through layoffs, charm his way out of discrimination complaints, and once, memorably, misspell empathy in a company-wide email about mental health. If Derek was summoning me at 7:47 a.m., I wasn't walking into a meeting. I was walking into a trap. I sat up, the silk sheets pooling around me, and stared at the invite. My dog, Riley, a scruffy golden retriever with a knack for sensing my mood, lifted his head from the foot of the bed. His brown eyes locked on mine, as if to say, "You're not going back to sleep, are you?" I wasn't. My heart was already hammering, a rhythm I hadn't felt since the last time Nexus Tech's board tried to tank a merger I'd spent 18 months orchestrating. I clicked into the invite. No other attendees listed. Just me, Derek, and a vague note, "Please join in Boardroom A." Boardroom A was the big one, all glass walls and ergonomic chairs, reserved for C-suite showdowns or investor dog and pony shows. It wasn't a room for casual chats. It was a room where careers went to die. I swung my legs over the bed, the hardwood cold against my bare feet, and tried to shake the dread. I'd been Nexus Tech's chief strategy officer for 6 years, steering the company through 2 acquisitions, a $2 billion 0-cents IPO, and a platform migration that saved us from a PR nightmare when our cloud servers leaked user data in 2019. 15 years I'd given them, climbing from a junior analyst to the C-suite, my fingerprints on every major win. I'd earned my seat at the table, hadn't I? But as I stood in my kitchen, brewing coffee strong enough to wake a coma patient, I couldn't ignore the truth. Loyalty in Silicon Valley is a one-way street. And I was starting to feel like roadkill. The drive to Nexus Tech's campus was a blur of fog and taillights, San Francisco's hills cloaked in a mist that matched my mood. I parked in my reserved spot, the one with my name etched in sleek chrome, and checked my phone. 7:39 a.m. 8 minutes to go. I smoothed my blazer, a tailored black number I'd worn to close the last merger, and stepped into the elevator. The glass box hummed upward, reflecting my face back at me, pale, sharp, a woman who'd learned to hide fear behind a spreadsheet and a smile. The doors opened on the 12th floor, and I stepped into the sterile glow of Nexus Tech's executive wing. The air smelled of espresso and ambition, undercut by something sharper, like the tang of a freshly printed pink slip. Boardroom A was at the end of the hall, its glass walls frosted for privacy. I pushed the door open, and the first thing I noticed was the silence. No clatter of keyboards, no murmured small talk. Just Derek, perched at the head of the table like a vulture in a 3-piece suit, and Nathan Cole, our CEO, slouched in a chair, with a stare so cold it could have frozen the bay. Nathan, the man who'd once called me his secret weapon at a shareholder meeting, didn't look up. He just sat there, fingers drumming on a Starbucks cup, his eyes fixed on the logo like it held the secrets of the universe. 15 years we'd worked together, and he couldn't even meet my gaze. "Emily, thanks for coming on short notice," Derek said, his voice all polished, HR sleaze. He gestured to a chair, already pulled out. A small but deliberate power move. I sat, my spine straight, my hands folded to keep them from shaking. We've got some important updates to discuss. Updates. That's what they call it when they're about to gut you. I'd heard the euphemisms before. Restructuring, realignment, optimization. They're the corporate equivalent of, it's not you, it's me. Except you're the one left jobless while they swipe right on someone cheaper. I glanced at Nathan, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He didn't. Just kept staring at that damn cup. Derek cleared his throat, sliding a tablet across the table. As part of our global optimization initiative, we've identified redundancies in the executive structure. Effective immediately, your role as Chief Strategy Officer is being phased out. The words hit like a sucker punch, stealing the air from my lungs. Phased out. Redundant. After 15 years of 80-hour weeks, of saving their asses through market crashes and PR disasters, I was redundant. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My brain was screaming, say something, fight back. But all I could do was stare at the tablet, its screen glowing with an org chart that didn't include my name. We're grateful for your contributions, Derek continued, his smile as genuine as a knockoff Rolex. You've been a key part of Nexus Tech's journey, but this move allows us to streamline for the future. Streamline. Another word for screwing over someone who'd given you everything. I forced myself to speak, my voice low but steady. And what does this mean for my team? For the merger I've been leading? Derek's smile tightened, a crack in his HR facade. Your team will report to a new executive, and the merger is under review. You'll find details in your severance packet. Severance packet. There it was, the corporate guillotine. He slid a manila folder toward me, its edges crisp like it had been prepared days ago. I didn't touch it. I looked at Nathan, willing him to speak, to acknowledge the years I'd spent covering his blind spots, rewriting his speeches, pulling all-nighters so he could play golf with investors. Nathan, I said, my voice sharper now, you have nothing to say. He flinched, just barely, but still didn't look up. It's a board decision, Emily, he muttered, his words barely audible, not personal. Not personal. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to throw that Starbucks cup at his head. Not personal. I'd trained 3 departments, saved 2 acquisitions, and rewritten their diversity playbook after Derek botched it with a tone-deaf inclusion campaign. I'd given Nexus Tech my life, and they were tossing me out like a used Post-it note. Derek stood, his smile back in place. We'll need you to clear your office by noon. Security will assist. He paused, then added, We appreciate your service. Appreciate. The word was a slap, dry and hollow. I stood, my legs steady despite the rage boiling in my chest. You're making a mistake, I said, locking eyes with Derek. A big one. He didn't flinch, just gestured to the door. Security's waiting. The walk to my office was a gauntlet of pitying glances and averted eyes. My assistant, Mia, hovered by my door, her face pale. Emily, I didn't know. It's fine, I lied, brushing past her. My office, once a sanctuary of glass and chrome, felt like a crime scene. I grabbed what I could, my laptop, a framed photo of Riley in a Santa hat, a USB drive with the merger plans I'd been working on for months. Derek had told me to leave it, but screw him, it was mine. Security loomed in the doorway, 2 guys in cheap suits who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Ma'am, we need to move this along, one said, his voice gruff but not unkind. I nodded, shoving the USB into my bag. As I stepped into the hall, my access card beeped, then died mid-swipe. Deactivated. They hadn't even waited for me to leave the building. The humiliation burned, but I kept my head high, my heels clicking against the marble floor. I was Emily Harper, damn it. I'd built this place. They didn't get to erase me. The parking garage was a concrete maze, the air thick with exhaust. I slid into my Tesla, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel. The engine hummed to life, and I pulled onto the ramp, the city's hills rising ahead. That's when it happened. I pressed the brake, and nothing. The pedal sank to the floor, useless, as the car picked up speed on the steep incline of Lombard Street. My heart slammed against my ribs. I yanked the emergency brake, but it barely slowed the descent. A delivery truck loomed ahead, its horn blaring. I swerved, tires screeching, and skidded to a stop inches from a guardrail, the city spinning below. I sat there, gasping, my hands frozen on the wheel. Brake failure? On a car I'd had serviced 2 weeks ago? My mind raced back to the meeting, to Derek's smirk, to Nathan's silence. This wasn't an accident, this was sabotage. Nexus Tech didn't just want me gone, they wanted me silenced. I drove home on autopilot, my knuckles white, my pulse a war drum. My loft in Soma was my sanctuary, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows. But when I stepped inside, that sanctuary shattered. The place was a wreck. Drawers yanked open, papers strewn across the floor, my safe cracked and empty. My work files, the ones I'd kept on a private server for the merger, were gone. Someone had been here and they weren't subtle about it. Riley whimpered, nudging my hand, and I knelt to hug him, my breath ragged. "We're okay, buddy," I whispered, but I wasn't sure I believed it. I checked my phone, half expecting another cryptic Teams invite, but instead there was a text from an unknown number. "Sign the severance or we leak the misconduct file." You know what it says. Misconduct? I'd never so much as fudged an expense report. This was a bluff, but a dangerous one. If Nexus Tech was planting lies, they weren't just firing me. They were trying to bury me. I sank onto the couch, Riley's head in my lap, and opened my laptop. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. I spent hours digging into C-suite severance norms, my screen a blur of industry reports and legal blogs. The numbers were clear. Executives at my level got 6-12 months pay, stock options, and COBRA coverage. Nexus Tech's offer 2 weeks' salary, and a pamphlet on transition services. It was an insult, a middle finger wrapped in legalese. I printed the data, my printer whirring as Riley snored beside me. By 3 a.m. I had a binder thick enough to bludgeon Derek's ego. The next morning I marched back to Nexus Tech, my blazer crisp, my binder heavier than my doubts. Derek was in his corner office, sipping a Diet Coke like it was a personality trait. "Emily," he said, not standing. "Let's make this quick." I dropped the binder on his desk, the thud echoing. "Industry standards for a C-suite exit are 6-12 months pay. Your offer doesn't cover my rent. Fix it." He leaned back, his smirk infuriatingly calm. "Fixed policy, Emily. It's non-negotiable." "Non-negotiable?" I snapped, flipping open the binder. "I've got data showing your marketing VP got twice this after 2 years. You want to tell me why I'm worth less after 15? His nostrils flared, a rare crack in his facade. "Those are confidential, and frankly, this is standard for your situation." Standard. The word was a match to my kindling. "You don't get to hide behind standard when you're lowballing me. I built this company, Derek. I deserve better." He stood, his voice icy. "Sign the packet, Emily, or you'll regret it." I didn't sign. I walked out, my binder under my arm, my resolve steel. That evening I went for a run along the Embarcadero. the bay's salt air clearing my head. That's when I saw it. A drone, hovering above me, its red light blinking like a predator's eye. I froze, my pulse spiking. It followed me for a block, then vanished into the dusk. Coincidence? Maybe. But after the breaks, the break-in, and the text, I wasn't betting on it. Back home, I locked the doors and dug through my files, desperate for leverage. In a locked safe, one the intruders hadn't touched, I found it, my 2010 employment contract, yellowed but intact. I flipped through the pages, my eyes catching on a clause I'd overlooked 15 years ago. All unvested shares under the Employee Equity Incentive Plan shall become fully vested upon termination of employment by the company without cause. I read it again, my breath catching. Without cause. Derek's exact words in the exit interview had been, "This isn't about performance, it's structural." The clause was active and the shares, tied to a $2 billion 0-cents merger, could be worth millions. This wasn't just leverage. This was a nuke. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from a Nexus Tech insider I hadn't spoken to in months. "They're planning to frame you for stealing merger data. Get a lawyer, now." I didn't sleep that night. I Googled employment lawyers, landing on Lauren Blake, a legal pit bull with a reputation for making CEOs cry. Her website was bare bones, just a photo of her in a flannel shirt and a tagline, "We don't negotiate, we win." Perfect. The next day, I drove to Oakland, my Tesla's brakes freshly repaired. Lauren's office was above a laundromat, the air thick with detergent and coffee. She looked up from her tablet, one eyebrow raised. "You're Emily Harper. My buddy says you got screwed. Sit." Spill. I laid it all out. The 7:47 a.m. bush, the brake failure, the break-in, the drone, the threats, and the clause. I handed her the contract, my hand steady despite the adrenaline. She read the clause, then reread it, her smile slow and dangerous. "They didn't include this in your severance, did they?" "No," I said. "They didn't mention shares at all." She leaned back, her eyes gleaming. "Oh, they're gonna regret that. This clause is a guillotine, and they handed you the rope." I exhaled, the weight lifting just enough to breathe. "I want them to pay," I said. "Not just the shares. I want them to know they underestimated me." Lauren's grin widened. "Honey, by the time we're done, they'll wish they'd never heard your name." As I left her office, the laundromat's hum fading behind me, I felt something shift. The fear was still there, but it was laced with something new. Rage, sharp and focused. Nexus Tech thought they'd erased me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The laundromat's hum vibrated through the floor of Lauren Blake's office, a gritty Oakland fortress that smelled of detergent, coffee, and the kind of legal chaos that could topple empires. I sat across from her, my hands clasped to keep them from trembling, the weight of the past 48 hours pressing against my ribs. The 7:47 a.m. ambush, the brake failure, the ransacked loft, the drone, the threatening texts. It was all too much, too fast, like a thriller where I hadn't auditioned for the lead. But the 2010 contract clause, that single paragraph about unvested shares vesting upon termination without cause, was my lifeline. Lauren had called it a corporate landmine, and as she leaned back in her creaking chair, her eyes glinted with the kind of glee reserved for predators spotting wounded prey. "This," she said, tapping the contract with a pen that looked like it had survived a war, "is a guillotine, and Nexus Tech's neck is already on the block." She flipped through my notes. The binder of severance benchmarks, the USB drive with merger plans, the screenshot of the anonymous text threatening to frame me for misconduct. "They didn't just fire you, Emily. They handed you a loaded gun and forgot to check the chamber." I nodded, my throat tight. "I want them to pay, Lauren. Not just the shares. I want them to know they can't erase me." Her smile was slow, wicked, like a chess master seeing checkmate 5 moves ahead. "Oh, they'll know. By the time we're done, they'll be rewriting their HR handbook in your honor." But as I left her office, the laundromat steam clinging to my blazer, I felt the world shift under me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I froze, half expecting another threat. Instead, it was a notification, an email from an unknown account, subject line blank. I opened it, my pulse spiking. A single line. "Your emails are with Nexus Tech's legal team. Stop now or it gets worse." Attached was a PDF of screenshots of my private emails. Ones I'd sent to Mia about the merger. Ones I'd written to myself late at night, venting about Nathan's incompetence. My phone had been hacked, my privacy gutted, and Nexus Tech was holding the knife. I drove back to my Soma loft, the Bay Bridge a blur of steel and fog, my mind racing. Who had access to my phone? How deep did this go? Riley greeted me at the door, his tail wagging, oblivious to the storm in my chest. I sank onto the couch, clutching the USB drive I'd taken from my office. It held the merger plans. Nexus Tech's $2 billion 0-cents bet on acquiring a rival AI firm. If they were hacking my phone, they wanted this drive, or they wanted me scared enough to give it up. Lauren called an hour later, her voice sharp. "Your phone's compromised? Forward me the email now." I did, my fingers shaking. "This is good," she said, surprising me. "They're sloppy. Hacking's illegal, and they just left a paper trail. We're not just demanding the shares anymore, we're exposing their negligence." Her plan was ruthless. A demand letter quoting the vesting clause, citing Derek's recorded exit interview where he admitted my firing wasn't performance-based, and threatening a public shareholder revolt if Nexus Tech didn't comply. "We frame it as bad faith," she said. "They omitted a multi-million-dollar clause from your severance. That's not a mistake, it's a cover-up." I agreed, but the weight of it crushed me. A shareholder revolt could tank Nexus Tech's stock, especially with the merger looming. I'd be painting a target on my back, bigger than the one already there. "What if they fight dirty?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted. Lauren snorted. "They already are." "Break failure? Break in? Drone? They're not playing chess, Emily. They're playing whack-a-mole. And you're the mole. Let me handle the dirty." I hung up, staring at the USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop, half expecting it to fry the system. The files loaded, spreadsheets, pitch decks, emails about the merger. But one file stood out, encrypted, labeled Project Cerberus. I tried every password I knew, but it wouldn't budge. What was Cerberus? A code name for the merger? Or something darker? I copied the file to a backup drive, my paranoia spiking. If Nexus Tech wanted this USB, Sarah's might be why. The next morning, I woke to a new nightmare, a subpoena, delivered by a dour process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I tore open the envelope, my heart sinking. Nexus Tech had filed an ethics complaint, accusing me of violating confidentiality by misappropriating merger data. The subpoena demanded I appear before their internal review board, a kangaroo court designed to ruin my reputation. If they pinned this on me, I'd be blacklisted from every tech firm in the valley. I called Lauren, my voice shaking. "They're framing me. Ethics violation? I didn't steal anything. They fired me and left the data on my desk." She was calm, almost gleeful. "This is their panic move. They're trying to discredit you before we go public. Send me the subpoena. I'll bury them in discovery. But the pressure was relentless. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Mia, my former assistant. "Boardroom's a war zone. Your letter hit hard." I stared at the words, a flicker of hope igniting. Lauren's demand letter had landed, and Nexus Tech was reeling. But before I could reply, another text came through, this one from an unknown number. "Check the Chronicle." My stomach dropped. I opened the San Francisco Chronicle's website, and there it was, a tabloid-style article screaming, "Nexus Tech exec accused of corporate espionage." My name, my photo, and a slew of lies about me, funneling merger data to a rival firm. The source? Anonymous, but the fingerprints were Nexus Tech's. I threw my phone across the room, Riley yelping as it skidded across the hardwood. Espionage? They weren't just firing me. They were torching my career, my life. I paced the loft, my breath ragged, until Lauren called again. "Saw the article," she said, her voice steel. "They're desperate. This is libel and they know it. We're adding it to the letter. Defamation, harassment, the works." I nodded, but the fear was choking me. "Lauren, they're not stopping. What if they come after me again?" "Then we hit harder," she said. "You're not a victim, Emily. You're a shareholder with a nuke. Let's detonate it." Her confidence steadied me, but the danger was escalating. That evening, I drove to Lauren's office to review the revised letter. As I stepped out of my Tesla, a black SUV roared around the corner, its tires screeching. I dove behind a dumpster, my heart hammering as the vehicle missed me by inches. The SUV didn't stop, disappearing into Oakland's dusk. But I saw its plates, unmarked, professional. This wasn't a random hit and run. This was a warning. I stumbled into Lauren's office, my blazer torn, my knees scraped. She took one look at me and cursed. "They're escalating," she said, handing me a coffee mug that smelled faintly of whiskey. "You okay?" "No," I admitted, my voice raw. "But I'm not backing down." She nodded, her eyes fierce. "Good, because the letter's ready. We're sending it tomorrow, 9:01 AM sharp. It quotes the clause, Derek's recording, and now they're hacking and defamation. We're demanding the full share value, $12 million, 0 cents, and threatening to audit their termination practices. If they don't pay, we go public, and their investors will eat them alive." I exhaled, the stakes sinking in. $12 million, 0 cents. A sum that could bankrupt Nexus Tech's merger, trigger an SEC inquiry, and make me a pariah in the valley. But I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for the 15 years they'd stolen, for the nights I'd spent building their empire while they planned my execution. The next day, the letter launched like a missile. Lauren had it timed to hit Nexus Tech's inboxes at 9:01 AM. The subject line, a surgical strike. Regarding equity clause and termination, Emily Harper. I sat on my couch, Riley's head in my lap, clutching a coffee I couldn't drink. The silence was torture, each tick of the clock a reminder that I'd just declared war on a tech giant. By 9:07, I'd checked my email 8 times, convinced my Wi-Fi had died. By 9:12, I was Googling, can companies void equity clauses retroactively? And spiraling into legal forums that might as well have been written in binary. At 10:06, my phone buzzed. Mia again. "OMG, they're freaking out." 2 minutes later, another text. "You didn't hear this from me, but legal's in a tailspin. Something big's happening." My heart pounded, hope and fear colliding. Lauren's letter wasn't just a demand. It was a mirror, reflecting Nexus Tech's arrogance back at them. They'd underestimated me, and now they were scrambling. But the victory was short-lived. At 7:14 AM the next day, my phone rang, the screen flashing Nathan's name. I let it ring twice, my finger hovering over decline. Curiosity won. "Hello?" I said, my voice ice. "Emily, what the hell did you do?" Nathan's voice was ragged, not angry, panicked like a man who just realized he'd bet the company on a losing hand. "That letter, it's a virus. Legal's in a meltdown, the CFO screaming about earnings, and the board's calling for heads." I leaned back, sipping my coffee, suddenly calm. "Morning, Nathan. Nice to hear from you after you threw me under the bus." "Don't play games," he snapped. "Your shares, 13% of the equity pool. They're triggering a reclassification. Finance says it's a $500 million 0 cents hit. The merger's at risk, Emily. You're killing us." I whistled, feigning surprise. $500 million? 0 cents? That's a lot for a redundant executive. "Maybe you shouldn't read my contract before firing me." He groaned, the sound of a man watching his legacy crumble. "You were supposed to phase out of the equity pool. They forgot to update the roster before the termination went through. It's a clerical error, Emily. You can't mean to push this." "A clerical error?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You hacked my phone, trashed my loft, tried to run me off the road. That's not clerical, Nathan. That's criminal." Silence. Then, weakly, I didn't know about that, I swear." "Liar," I said, my voice low. "Your personal email was in a hacked file tied to the sabotage. Care to explain?" He stammered, then recovered. "You're making a mistake. Take the severance, walk away. You don't want this fight." I leaned forward, my voice steel. "You treated me like I was disposable, Nathan. You thought I'd slink away with your pathetic packet. But I read the fine print, and now I'm a shareholder with enough equity to burn your house down. You don't get to beg now." I hung up, my pulse steady, my resolve iron. But the call left a shadow. Nathan's email in a sabotage file? I hadn't seen that. Lauren had. In the hacked data I'd forwarded? What else was she holding back? And who was the silent board member Mia had mentioned, the one watching me during the chaos? I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the fight ahead. Nexus Tech's response came that afternoon. An email from Executive Operations dripping with fake civility. Request for discussion and clarification. Equity agreement. They wanted a meeting, Friday, in the same boardroom where they'd fired me. Lauren read the email aloud, mocking its tone like a stand-up comedian roasting a heckler. "Discussion?" she snorted, slamming her laptop shut. "They're trying to dodge a train that's already left the station." We prepared like generals before a siege. Lauren sharpened the letter, adding the hacking, the hit and run, the smear article. I scoured the USB drive, still unable to crack Project Cerberus. The encrypted file gnawed at me. What was Nexus Tech hiding? A tax dodge? A data breach? Or something that could explain the drone, the SUV, the threats? Friday morning, I walked into Nexus Tech's headquarters, my black dress sharp enough to cut glass. Lauren led the way, her navy suit a blend of soft menace and legal precision. The boardroom was packed. 6 executives at the table, 2 assistants at the wall, laptops glowing like shields. Nathan sat at the head, his tan faded, his Botox failing to hide the stress. Derek was there, pale as a ghost, his Diet Coke untouched, and in the corner, a silent figure, a board member I didn't recognize. His eyes locked on me, unblinking. Who was he? And why did he feel like a predator sizing up prey? Nathan stood, his voice strained. "Emily, thank you for coming. We want to resolve this amicably." Lauren dropped her binder with a thud that echoed like a gavel. "Let's talk about your standard policy and how it conveniently ignored a $12 million 0 cents clause." She clicked her laptop and the projector flared to life, displaying the vesting clause. Highlighted, underlined, a legal Excalibur. All unvested shares vest upon termination without cause. Derek, care to explain why you omitted this? Derek stammered, his face a mask of sweat and regret. It wasn't in the severance template. Lauren's smile was a blade. And yet, it's in her signed contract, which supersedes your templates, unless your definition of good faith includes burying multi-million-dollar liabilities. A murmur rippled through the room. An assistant coughed, hiding a smirk. Nathan leaned forward, his fingers steepled like a sitcom villain losing the plot. We're not here to debate language. We're here to make this right. Then start by wiring $12 million, 0 cents, I said, my voice cutting through the room. Every head turned. I'm not here to sell my shares. I'm here to remind you I was never your mistake. I was your blind spot. Lauren nodded, her eyes gleaming. Nathan's jaw tightened. We're offering a buyback. Liquid value plus 20%. Sign an NDA and we wire it today. I looked at the number they slid across the table. It was a fraction of the shares worth, a muzzle disguised as generosity. No, I said, my voice steady. That's not even close. A lawyer piped up, his Rolex glinting. We could discuss alternatives. Lauren cut him off. Here's the deal. Option 1, you wire the full market value of Emily's shares by close of business. No NDA, no strings. Option 2, she keeps the shares, becomes an active shareholder, and files motions to audit your termination practices. We'll subpoena Derek, Nathan, and every email from the past year. Oh, and we'll do it publicly, so your investors can read about bad faith in the Wall Street Journal. The room went still, the air thick with panic. Nathan's face drained of color, and the silent board member shifted, his gaze never leaving me. What did he know? And why did I feel like he was the real threat? The meeting dragged on. Lawyers, tap dancing, Loren dismantling their arguments with surgical precision. Then a bombshell. The SEC had launched an inquiry into Nexus Tech's termination practices, naming me as a key witness. Loren leaned back, smirking. Looks like your standard policy is getting federal attention. Nathan snapped, his voice tight. Draft the wire. No handshake, no apology, just defeat. As we stood to leave, Lauren leaned close, her whisper barely audible. This isn't over. There's a bigger fight coming. Her words sent a chill through me. What did she know? And what was Project Cerberus hiding? 4 hours later, the wire hit my account. $12 million, 0 cents, the full value of my shares. I sat on my couch, Riley snoring beside me, and deleted every Nexus Tech email, severing 15 years of loyalty. I didn't pop champagne or post on LinkedIn. I fed Riley a second dinner and wired a chunk of the money to a whistleblower advocacy group, ensuring Nexus Tech's sins wouldn't stay buried. But as I stared at the ceiling, the unanswered questions gnawed. Who leaked my contract to a rival firm? Why was Nathan's email tied to the sabotage? What was Project Cerberus? Who was the silent board member? And what was Lauren's bigger fight? I wasn't just a shareholder now. I was a player in a game I didn't fully understand, and the board was far from clear.